Oros, Maya.
So
I asked everybody to think about it. Well,
wait, genitive singular.
put Oros, the word on the board. Okay, what declension does it belong to?
Third.
Right, so what do you know about the genitive singular third declension words?
The sigma?
It's a sigma with one particular grade of the vowel, as we call it. Or in fact, it's a quality of the vowel, which distinguishes it from the S nominative accusative plural, which you also see in the third declension. It is always os, but with oros, because oros is an S stem as it's known, hidden in there is the stem is actually or-s. So or-s, os becomes or-e, os stops there in Ionic and then becomes or-us, pulatus, in Attic. So this is a type. So telos, end is another one of these. So if you see these sort that are, you know it's neuter, we say it ends in an os. You know it's not second declension, it's going to be third, and it's going to be an S stem, as it's known. Therefore, now that you know that, well, I'm continuing to set this up. I'm going out here with my screen. There we go. Therefore, starting back over here with Christoforos, ta, nominative singular, nominative plural, ta. Ta.
Ora.
But you've got to account for the entire stem. Ta. Ta.
Trying to do it.
Ta. And how do you come by ore? And by the way, how would you spell that to be clear to everybody's? Omicron, as we say, small o. Omicron wrote eta. Yeah, and eta from or es a to or e a, which is where it stops in Ionic Greek, for example, to or e, contracted. Last question then, Samantha. Well, actually, give one to you. So, penultimate question. Genitive plural, therefore, given what we know about the formation of the stem now.
Oron.
Close, but again, we have to account for the entire stem. So we can't be dropping bits out of the middle. We can contract things if they contract normally.
Oreon.
Right, oreon, yeah. But it's oreon to oron. Right, so that accent shifts in the genitive plural. And then finally, dative plural. It's third declension. And we know that's an S stem neuter. There are two types of S stem neuters, but I'm giving you the more common sort right now. There's another sort that is us. Oh, anybody? Christopher, you want to give it a go? The dative plural of this? It's third declension. Third declension.
It's a C.
It's C. Good.
Or a C.
Or a C. Now, once there were two sigmas there, but it can simplify to one. Right? So, or e C from ores, C. Ores is the stem there. Just in the nominative singular, it's not like that, right? It's oros. All right, so that's a type to practice. Now, we have a lot of material to cover today. I already uploaded this to Blackboard a couple of days ago, in case you have time to have a look in advance. Prep yourself. So, comparison of adjectives and adverbs, and introduction to numbers. Now, I did put at the beginning of the slide presentation, this also is the one that's uploaded to Blackboard, just a map to help us figure out where we are in transit So we started out in Athens, they go down to Piraeus, right, the new harbor, by Athenian standards at that time, it's a fairly new harbor of Athens. And then they make their way over to the island of Salamis, and then from Salamis they're making their way over to Epidaurus. And this is where they're hitting the rough sea, and there's probably a bad man on board, according to the paranoid guy. And so I've then put this in sort of the broader context of Greece. So you've got a map there at your disposal, in addition to those that are provided in your textbook. This one's color and shows all the landforms, and it's mine, it's there. Okay, so again, little inset map, point out where we are, Epidaurus. Lots of things at Epidaurus. As I think Alexandros pointed out in the last class, this is where we have probably the most famous ancient theater in the ancient world, the largest in the mainland of Greece. But it's not why Epidaurus existed. It's not that it was a theater out in the middle of nowhere. It was a theater attached to a religious site, a sanctuary to the healing god Asclepius. So one has to remember, or learn, if you didn't know in the first instance, that theater was not a secular matter in Greece. Theaters weren't this thing down on a main street in the city, and the temple was somewhere else, like churches and theaters aren't commonly associated in contemporary society. Rather, theaters were there for performances that accompanied some major religious festival. They go in sanctuaries, or they're beside sanctuaries. So this is just a shot of it, and a little bit about its building. Notice it's 4 centuries after this period. It's the century following the century we're talking about now. And it holds about 13,000 persons. It's been much restored, but it serves as a nice outdoor theater even today. So if you get tickets for an advance, you can see comedy, you can see tragedy performed here, sometimes in the original ancient Greek, sometimes in modern Greek interpretation. But in any case, the acoustics are amazing, and it's a fantastic setting. You sit out on a summer night and enjoy the performance and enjoy the atmosphere and the smell of the Aleppo pines wafting through the air. It's a wonderful smell. It's very nostalgic for me when I go to Greece. The smell of pines in the summer especially. All right, so those are there. Comparison of adjectives, the basics. And then I'm going to go through some irregular sorts. I put irregular in quotation marks because they're kind of the normal sort. And they're only irregular because of some of these weird consonant rules that I've tried to outline for you. So that's those which look quite irregular are thanks to phonological rules. And notice that some of them are suppletive. You'll recall that I've used this term suppletive already in the context of verbs, where you have a verb in which some of the principal parts are from a different stem than the others. We get that in English. We get it famously for the verb to be, which has 3 stems. The be stem, the am stem, if you will, and the was stem, all of which are unrelated to one another. And you've seen this now in Greek, where you have horao, right, opsomai, and agon, the first 3 principal parts there, all of which are derived from separate stems. You get it also in comparisons of adjectives and, by extension, adverbs in many cases. We get this in English too. Only children who are trying to formulate rules in their head as they hear adults speak are likely to say gooder, when we know that better is the word, even though good is the positive degree. So we have suppletion in English also with comparative and superlative forms. All right, so adjectives and adverbs, right? We'll deal with adverbs a little bit later. Can be marked for degrees of comparison. You've already had a few of these, right? You've had particularly your superlative forms given to you, the stos forms, stos stay ston, as in megastos, right? Biggest, largest, greatest. So in addition to the positive degree, and the positive degree is the basic degree, right? It's the basic quality conveyed by your adjective or your adverb. So I've given you the example here, high, right? But it could be green, or it could be big, or it could be quick, or whatever your adjective is. In addition to this positive degree, you have a comparative degree. So a regular formation in English, just put ER on it, higher, right? That's in comparison with something else. This thing is higher than that. And then we have a superlative degree. And in English, this is usually an absolute sense. You'll see in ancient Greek, it's not always an absolute sense, because you have seen how you can be translated as very, right? Very big. But highest, right? Most high. And notice I wanted to unpack that in English into 2 words. I had to use most. And most also has a superlative ending on it, right? That literally is in English saying the biggest high, right? The most high. So it's hard to get around using in short order anything but another superlative to try to explain what a superlative is. As I wrote, as the parenthetical examples will suggest, some of these in English, as in Greek, right, are formed regularly, while others are formed somewhat irregularly. And I've given you the example of a couple of, common adjectives which have suppletive forms. So you don't say badder, usually in English, we say worse. And not only is worse not of the same root or stem as bad, but it doesn't look like it's formed the same way either. Well, it doesn't end, it's not worser. Worst, it seems okay. It has a sta on it, but worst looks a little odd. We have to, it has to be explained in some fashion. And so also in Greek, you're going to get suppletion and you're going to get a few that just don't look like they follow the rules. And I'm going to try to talk you through those forms and give you a little bit of an explanation for how they come to be that way, if that helps you remember it. Otherwise, it's just a question of rote memorization again. All right, so regular, or basic comparison of adjectives is this one. And this is going to look familiar to the modern Greek speaker here, but be prepared for the fact that in ancient Greek you're going to encounter forms that do not follow the rules you're accustomed to in modern Greek. So in Greek, suffixes corresponding to the ER ending, right, what we think of as a regular ending for a comparison in English. When in doubt, we'll put ER on something to make it the comparative degree. And the EST ending, or ST ending in English, are the following. Teros, tera, teron. Right? That's the comparative, and this is the superlative. Tatos, tate, taton. Now notice what I've done here. I've shown you that in these forms, which the masculine and the neuter, and of course I've given you just the nominative singular here for simplicity's sake, the dictionary entry form. The accent is back here on the antepenult. But because this is a long vowel, and I could put a macron on there if I wanted to, it's a long alpha, it means that the final long ultima rule kicks in and the accent has to move toward the end of the word. So that's why the accent falls here. So these are simply added to the stem of the positive degree. And this is what has become the standard way of doing it in modern Greek. In fact, they've even created forms that have no justification from an ancient Greek perspective on analogy in modern Greek. But you'll see that there's some complications. Now, I will point out to you that this ending teros, tera, teron, those are the nominative singular forms, I'll remind you, right, is that general contrastive oppositional suffix that you've actually run into before. So I gave you the example of, with albeit somewhat different accentuation, and that's actually apparently just to distinguish the word as a noun, aristera, right, versus dexia you had, right, left versus right, agreeing with heker, the hand, that's why it's feminine. And this means on the best side. As you'll see in a moment, the comparative degree of good is arion. So it's the ares, right, plus terra on the best side. It's that apotropaic name that we get for the left hand in a lot of Indo-European languages. And you also have not encountered this, but this is the word nupteros, means on the night side of something, right? Contrasting it with the day side. Notice incidentally it pops up in Latin as the noctur part, just the Romans decided to put a nus on the end as well. It's nocturnus, they just throw in an extra adjective ending, but it's also there. And incidentally, this teros ending is the teros ending which in English appears and a lot of contrastive words, like either or, on this side or the other, whether or not, what this thing or that thing. So the thir ending that we have on those sorts of words in English comes from the same teros, or the same root as this Greek teros, tera, teron. And this latter ending, the tos at least of it, is when we come down to our numbers a little bit later, our ordinal numbers, the ordering numbers, you putting things in a serial order, it also appears as in those. So protos, which you should recognize, meaning the first, right? Masculine nominative singular, is actually the promost, if you will. It's the foremost. So the tos ending there means that as you're starting to count things in order, if you want to say something is the first, it means that's the most I'm going to reach. Right? So watch me count for you. First, that's where I'm going to stop. Second, right? Different root. Third, fourth, and so forth. And it becomes quite regular after a point. So there's a direct comparison between the superlative ending, normal superlative ending, this common superlative ending thrown onto most things, and the endings for your ordinal numbers. Because apparently the inherent idea was that you were counting up to the highest point with those numbers, and you're marking it. That's as far as I'm going to go. That's the most I'm going to travel to with counting. So, let's give you some examples. All right, so, ptokos, ptoke, ptokon, right? Poor. Ptokoteros, ptokotera, and that's a long alpha. I'll probably go back and put my macrons in. It's fussy typing in ancient Greek. I have to hit a hyphen vowel to get that on my keyboard to work right. Right, and so I put the accent mark indicating that it should be over the epsilon here. Ptokoteron. Right, poorer. Most poor or very poor. Ptokotatos. Right, ptokotate and ptokotaton. Now, I'll remind you, why is this a long alpha? Does everybody remember? Because, yeah, and not an eta as it is here.
Something to do with vowels and consonants going away. But
No, actually, in this case, it has to do with the fact that in Attic Greek, if a long an inherited long right, comes after a vowel like iota, or if it comes after a rho, right, it will be a. Otherwise, it becomes a. In Ionic Greek, every long alpha becomes a. So as in ancient Attic Greek, if they wanted to tell you about the account of something, they would say, hey, historia, but Herodotus says, hey, historiae. They're always etas. But it's because it's after a rho that it remains a long alpha. All right, and then they give you a different sort of, so this is your common second plus first declension, combination adjective, two different declensions, combined declensions. A lot of those, kalos is a common example of those. That's sort of a paradigmatic example. Here's one of those S-stem adjectives. These are the adjectival equivalent of tooros. But rather than having os is there, and then you have ace in the masculine and feminine, and s in the neuter, revealing, if you will, the naked s stem that's there. So this means true. And then you've had this, ta'alete, the true things, used idiomatically in ancient Greek to mean truth, right? The true things. Notice it is regular insofar as it keeps its s stem when combining with teros. So it doesn't become aletoteros, an analogy with those that are of this sort of combined declension. This is a single s stem declension. It's aletesteros, aletestatos in the masculine singular, right? Just keeps its stem like you'd expect. This sort, however, generalizes the omicron of the second declension. So at no point does this become toketera, just because it's feminine. Right? This generalizes the mixed declension, mixed first, second declension type generalize the omicron of the second declension. So that's true, truer, truest, or as I'll explain a little bit later, most true, very true. New type, I gave you your homework sheet for. Varus, barea, varu. Right? Heavy. Right? This is where we get various words concerning pressure and heaviness. Like barometric, right? Measurement of the heaviness of something. Right? So, barometric pressure. Now, it generalizes the upsilon. However, the upsilon is actually in there, which is, it just doesn't look like it. This is eugia. Just the digamma is dropped out. But the upsilon gets generalized, so it's normal in that respect. Baruteros, barutera, baruteron, and so forth. So take the stem, plus its characteristic ending, slap your new suffix on, and you've got your comparative and superlative degrees. A sort that you haven't dealt with very much, this is an example of a kind of adjective whose underlying stem is on. This is from ons originally. Melas, black, as in things like melanin and melanoma and other things that pertain to having a black characteristic in English. So melas, melina from melania, ultimately. Melan, neuter, singular, is just sort of the naked stem. And it also is regular, just keeps the on ending, as you would expect. Right? Melanteros. And melantatos and all the other inflections of it. And I've just thrown in a couple of other sorts, just to sort of complete the paradigms. These are kinds of third declension adjectives that you've not encountered yet. So the underlying form of this is actually ens, right? So it keeps its esteros, yeah.
Why is so graceful
Mm-hmm.
and graceless have the same root, correct?
They have the kare part, yeah.
And then, well, I guess what's the change? Why is it the now?
Oh, why is this is and that ace?
Yeah.
Because this is an ending which comes from whens or whence to begin with, and it literally means full of. If you want to say replete with something, you just throw in the suffix. You encounter it a lot in Homer. He makes everything ace or asa, something. Whereas the less form is simply just not having it.
Right. That's what
Right.
That's what it looks
Whereas
like.
that special ending means full of something. You get the pattern, right? So anytime you're going to encounter a new adjective in a positive degree, and so far you've had down to where my arm is, right? You're just going to take its stem, which you need to be able to recognize, and put on your suffixes. That's the regular formation of these. Now there's a very weird spelling rule. This actually kind of applies across the board. And that is that when you have an o, like it's like generalized and tokoteros and so forth, or, right, it retains it if the preceding vowel is long, but it changes it to being long when the vowel is short. So tokoteros but neoteros. This is really peculiar to dialects of Greek, and it appears to be because there's a resistance in Greek dialect to having 3 short syllables in a row. So if they can avoid it, they will. Or sorry, having 4 short syllables in a row. But they'll... So that just explains the spelling convention you're going to see. I frankly don't expect you to remember that at this point. I need you to recognize it, but I don't expect you to remember it. Oh, that sounds right.
I was wondering if in our word formations, or when we're trying to go about it, how would we tell which vowel goes longer? Like where?
Well, this is, and omega is always longer by nature, which is why I've given you that.
Yeah, but like
Oh, if it's something which isn't like an omega isn't obvious, well, H's are always long, omegas are always long.
So you just
You just kind
kind of
of have to know it. That's why it's one of those reasons, those things where I expect you to recognize nail it, and also not go, oh my god, why is there an omega? But I don't expect you to be able to backform it until you have a complete mastery of Greek and know what to expect of vowel length in any given situation. But I have to put that in there because if I don't put it in there, someone's going, why is it omega, Dr. Lane? And I'll be like, because. Okay, so, and then there's this weird type. Remember the contracting types? Os becomes unus, right? Having a good mind. Agnos becomes agnus, right? Right? Unknown or ignorant. So it just keeps the sigma in an annoying way, kind of. Right? Unus deros. It treats it as if it's a brand new sort of stem, rather than recognize that in fact it's a derivation of a second declension. And then there are a few third declension adjectives which take an analogical stem. So again, I'm going to sort of zip through this part because again, you've not encountered these much lately. You're not going to encounter them anytime soon. But I feel like I have to do a complete job. So you would expect if it's eudaimon, having a good spirit, which is what this means, of a person, happy, blessed is what it means. You'd expect it to be eudaimon, right? Eudaimon, just end in the new, but it doesn't. Not in that Greek, it doesn't. It suddenly pretends like it's an S stem, like aletes. So there are few that are analogical like that. It happens in modern Greek. I don't want to digress too much, but we have kaliteros, better, is justifiable because the underlying root of kalos is actually kalmos. There actually is an upsilon in there. But in modern Greek, they've made the comparative of big, megaliteros, an analogy with kaliteros, even though there was never a digamma in mega. So this is an example of what happened in the ancient language. They're just doing it on analogy with another common form. And then other examples of this. Harpox, raping or rapacious. You're not going to encounter this anytime soon, but they treat it as if it were like the akatis, graceless type. So these are just analogical examples. They're the exception to the rule. I threw them in just to give you a couple of exceptions. I know from experience if I don't tell you, someone's going to raise the issue, right? So they're there. Okay, look at PowerPoint, damn it. Okay, so, right, and then talkative, right, is treated as if it's the akatis type. Let's move on to the important stuff. All right, so you're getting the pattern. Teros tatos, right? Tera tate, teron taton, right? With those are comparative and superlative, respectively, of masculine, feminine, neuter in the nominative singular, the dictionary entry form. You should know how to decline from there. It's a long, slow decline. Okay, so irregular and suppletive sorts. Okay, so ectros, hostile. Actually, encountered that lately, right? Enemy. Its comparative degree is ion in the masculine, feminine, and ion in the neuter. Like so many third declension adjectives, it has, like all third declension adjectives, which is it has one form for the masculine and feminine, like aletes, true, and another for the neuter. That's really the normal pattern in important respects, because basically the masculine and feminine form get the agent form with the long vowel, ons, with your shape, right? And the neuter doesn't get it. So what this does is it has this, and it puts on our sta ending, the one that's actually familiar to us from English. Tatos doesn't look like est or sta, does it? But this has the sta ending, which you've seen. So, in fact, this is the inherited pattern for comparison, and for the comparative and the superlative. The prior regular sort, which is very common, that's actually a Greek invention. This is the inherited Proto-European underlying forms. So, notice that it drops the ending here of characteristic ending of the positive degree and slaps on this ion, ion, or istos, iste, iston ending. I will explain what exactly is happening here in a minute. But let me just give you the examples. Some very important examples. You're going to encounter them soon. This has ros as its ending here. This has us as its ending. It's like barus, right? This has os as its ending. You think to yourself, well, us isn't like potokos, poor? Except that this is actually kalos, as I said a second ago. And it's actually simply one of these that has become second declension. So an extra omicron put in. Megas you've seen, and then right, it's a mixed declension sort of its own. Third and first together, first being the feminine. Megas, ooh, what the hell's going on there? Medzon, megastos. What's happening here is that megion becomes medzon. It's one of the rules I couldn't fit on that sheet yet. Tacus, swift and or quick. I've already had. Good gracious, what's happened there? What did it become with theta? I do have that rule written down. Okay. It's something called Grassmann's law. Explains that. But the comparative is tagon in Attic Greek, tason in Ionic Greek. Polus, right? Pole, pleion. You've already had this. That follows the pattern, right? You're just dealing with the degree 0 of this root. So it loses the omicron completely. The vowel of the root becomes pla, and then takes your endings. Pleistos, right? Very much, very many, or the most of something. Now, how are you going to know? I get this question a lot. I had somebody ask me a Latin question yesterday. How am I going to know? How am I going to know some of these fourth declension? They asked me in Latin. I'm like, good luck. Okay, so how are you going to know? Well, these are often, firstly, notice they're all simplicia. They're all simple roots. They're not compounds. So you're not going to encounter this with compounds. They're often very common, very old words, right? Things that people would have needed to use when they were back hunting and foraging. Like big and hostile, right? Okay, and beautiful and quick. And they will typically be adjectives that end in ros, mos, I don't have an example of that one there, us. Those are common ones, right? So if you see ros and us in particular, you think, I bet there's going to be this inherited type. Old adjectives. It's actually something called the Callan system, which I may get into in time. Somebody by the last name of Callan noticed that this was a regular pattern. And they are actually related to a group of verbs known as stative verbs, which end in eh. But that's a topic for another lecture at an advanced level. These are all Callan system adjectives, in short. Do this. Old adjectives that have endings like that. And then you get suppletion. So I've shown you a new set of endings, but they remember notice the stems stay the same effectively, right? They just back up. Oops, not that far. What did I do? Right, notice that at least the root word hasn't changed. But now we get different roots. So agathos means good. You have a whole bunch of different possibilities for better and for best.
That's all one word.
Those are different variations. Notice that if agathos is used to mean good, and this particularly if it means something good of quality, amenon, good, beltinon, right? This means improved very often, right? If you mean good in the sense of being strong, having, right? Kreton, if you mean good in the sense of being desirable, loyon. These are four different suppletive stems for agathos, good. But aristos, right? The aristocracy is ruled by the self-styled best or the most noble, right? Having the best human qualities. And that's when you would use that preferentially. Not consistently, but preferentially. So those are kakos, bad or evil. If you mean evil, you'll generally say kakion, eviler. If you say that in English, more evil. Right? But if you mean worse of quality, it's usually keron. Kakistos, kakistocracy, or the worst people in quality, right? But if it's a bad, worst quality object, you'll tend to use this. There is a gray area, for sure, especially in later usage. But it's the reason underlying the different sorts of suppletion, you see. Makros, right? We get a normal sort, but we also get nekistos for longest. Mikros, we get a normal sort, but we also get elaton for smaller and elakistos for least. Low in quality in particular, heton. Oligos, right? Oligos you've had. Suppletion, only in the comparative degree, meion. But then it pops back up again as the oligo form with the ist ending, not the otatos ending in the superlative. Remember, I put these up there for you partly for reference, but the normal pattern, right? When in doubt, think it's going to be teros, tere, tera, teron, tatos, tate, taton. If you see a new simple adjective and you notice that it ends in us or ros, like especially, then think to yourself, there's a good chance this is going to have one of those suppletives, or it's going to have one of those so-called irregular endings, the eon endings in it. So this is how they decline. So this is the declension of better. Notice the difference in accent between the masculine and feminine form and the neuter form. Recessive there. It's basically just a third declension nasal stem. There's nothing new really there, right? You are going to see these forms in writing eventually. Don't worry about it right now. Throw them in there just to complete the paradigm for you. But there's nothing new here. This is like Poseidon or Apollon, right? Words you've already had, or Kemon, winter storm. So they decline like third declension nasal stems. Some are, the more common words are a little weird. They drop letters. So notice it's not paleoteros. In that Greek, it's palaiteros. They drop the old. And so you've had this word for adjective for old, also drops the omicron. And you get some variations sometimes. So they've given you most dear already in your textbook. They've given you this version. But you can also see this, delaitatos. Right, and hesukos, right? It's another adjective you should recognize. And it just does this, has two variations. Okay, how are they used? All right, so the comparative degree is compared with a noun in the genitive, right? Singular, plural. What you're saying is the aider or the adjectiver of whatever the noun is. That's the underlying rule. It's an inherited rule. Put P-I-E part of the European. And that applies in Greek. right? Po aner medzoneste tu paidos, of the child. Right? And in genitive plural, in particular with the superlative, right? The aest of all ends, right? So Leonides, this is actually in your textbook, panton ton stratioton aristose. Leonidas was, right, the best of all the soldiers. Notice it concerns his personal quality, so it's aristos.
So it's always going to be in the plural?
Always right, of the plural, yeah. Always the plural with the superlative. Depends on the context for the comparative degree. It's going to be whether you're comparing something to one thing or a bunch of things that are plural. All right. However, this is important, however, if the comparison is between two phrases or clauses, right, in which the grammatical cases of the comparons, the thing, right, the comparing and the thing to be compared, right, this just means the comparing adjective, have to be the same, then you use the disjunction a or. It's the other major use of the word a. Use it as though you're saying than in English. So again, from your textbook, medzunastraton ekin ho xerxes e pantes hoi Hellenes. Xerxes had a bigger army than all of the should have written Greeks had by implication. So two separate clauses are implied there. If you're comparing clauses, not say man to boy, apple to orange, right? One melon to another melon, which is smaller, then you're going to use a as the than. This problem is more difficult than that problem. Will be an example where you use it. Right? And two things that are different from English in usage. Without a comparandum, in other words, without something to which it's being directly compared, like the man to the child, then if you see, in other words, the comparative degree being used by itself, it means to some degree. And I introduced this to you in your textbook. Right? And so here, if you use a superlative without something it's being compared to, the highest of all buildings, then you use this to mean very. That's where you get the very translation. The crowd was very great. Right? Well, homilos pleistosane, which you had in your text. All right, just the remaining few minutes, I'm going to give you adverbs and a little bit about numbers. So the comparison of adverbs follows from the comparison of adjectives. Pretty simple, right? After all that, the comparison of adverbs is pretty straightforward, right? Those ending, right, you get those ending neuter singular on, neuter plural a, or simply os use. Neuter singular with the comparative adjective for the comparative degree. In other words, what I'm saying is if you have a positive degree that is the neuter singular or the neuter plural of an adjective, which you've seen commonly, right? So proton you've seen as meaning the first thing, right? With respect to the first thing, first they do the following. Then, or if you have one of your very common adverbs that end in os, then when you use the comparative degree of the adverb, it's just going to be the neuter singular form. And the neuter plural is then used for the superlative form. And I'll give you some illustrations of this in just a second. Now, those that are related to prepositions, right? In other words, higher, more high, right? Which you know is ana, above, right? They're derived from preposition. They will take a different ending. They take o as their ending, right? And that's actually just a variation of your adverbial os. So examples. Dikaios, justly. Notice I'm talking about adverbs now. Dikaioteron, neuter singular, dikaiotata. Right? Most justly. So pos, wisely, right? Notice the os ending. That's so characteristic of your derivative adverbs. So poteron, so potata. just follows a very regular pattern. Use the neuter singular of the comparative to mean more blankly, more adverbly, and use the neuter plural to mean most adverbly, whatever the adverb would be. And this is examples of those that are derived from prepositions, right? So, exo is outside, things that are exo, right? Exoteric. Esoteric is inner learning, exoteric is for the masses, right? Outside of. Exotato. And that omega ending there is just a variant of your os adverb ending. And you've had some of those, you had ano and kato at least. Then have angus, near, angutero, angutato, most near. So this is an example I was talking about. They fought rather bravely. If you use them without a comparandum, andreoteron, right? The comparison without a comparandum means to some degree, rather, somewhat, right? And we've had Edramons, I ran Pakistan, neuter plural, most quickly. And you've had that rule already. But notice that hos plus the superlative degree of the adverb means as quickly as possible, as adverbly as possible. All right, we've run over a little bit. Here are your numbers. Let's pick this up tomorrow and have us practice them. Here are your counting numbers. I've given you just a few. I've written, this is just Greek for etc. Notice that beyond this point is going to be what you expect. Hexaedica, right? Heptaedica, and so forth. 20 and 100. And I'll show you how they decline. We'll go over that. And here are your ordinal numbers. Notice that the curious thing here about second is it doesn't follow the pattern. And what does it have? It has the contrastive ending. As if it's saying, I'm on the two side of one. Right? I'm on the primary binary opposition. There's one, there's first, and then there's me, the other side. So it takes the teros ending as if it's a comparative adjective. Why do we say second in English? Anybody know? Well, it comes from Latin secundus. Secundus also doesn't follow the pattern in Latin. Well, it's because it is the thing that is from Latin sequor, which is where we get the word sequence from. It means I'm the one that follows. Right? So that's why second doesn't fit the pattern in English either. First, and then I'm the one that's following. That's a similar sort of connotation. This is first, and I'm the thing to contrast with it second. Primary binary opposition. All right, that's where I'm going to leave it today. This is up on Blackboard. I might put some macrons in and tweak it the way I do occasionally. We'll talk about what's going to be on the quiz on Friday, but it's probably just getting you to try to do the forms correctly, right? Just give you a couple of them, normal type, few irregulars that are from adjectives you're familiar with, like kalos, and then maybe some numbers, just some counting numbers. We'll see. I'll get a feel for it. All right, thanks a lot, and see you class tomorrow, right? We will run.